Hello, and welcome back to the McCall's Quilting Summer Garden Quilt-Along. I'm Laura Roberts, and I'm here to share with you in this wonderful adventure to make this gorgeous, beautiful, feminine quilt. So today I'm just going to give you a little refresher on basic rotary cutting, and then we'll move right into how to cut a big border strip, because some people have a real hard time with it, and I don't think many people get taught. So it's kind of a thing where you're sort of doing your best. So I'm going to just show you how I do it. Okay, I know there are probably other ways, but this is how I do it. So I'm going to start by showing you how to do just regular rotary cutting. So I just came home from the quilt store, and here's my fabric, and it's in a heap. Where do I start? Well, the first thing you need to do is square up your fabric. And by that, I mean you want to get it where the selvages are together, like that, but where the grain is okay, where the grain is where it should be. Now, if I were to hold this up like that, you'll see something's wrong here, right? You see that? I have to scooch it along. And if I hold it this way, let's say I put I've got my selvages right together. The selvages are perfect, but there's something not right. Do you see those kind of bits that are looking a little strange, like sideways? So what you're going to do to get rid of that is you're going to slide the selvage down. So you'll move the selvage this way or this way, and you'll see if I move the selvage way that way, do you see how I get more problem? If I move it back this way, whoops, if I move it back this way, eventually those sort of saggy bits disappear, and oh, look at that. That is where you want it. Straight grain, so we don't have anything weird going on. Excuse me. Now, usually, you're not going to have, when you get your selvages aligned, and you've got that grain just where it's supposed to be, so you don't have any, it's just nice and straight and flat, you're going to often find that when it was cut, it wasn't cut exactly the way you would have wanted it to be cut. It's just the way it is. And it's because when the manufacturers, all fabrics, when they wrap it on the bolt, the fabric can just skew a little bit. And so they'll, you may have a little bit kind of like that. It's okay. All of the yardage in the pattern has been figured so for things like that happening, okay? And another thing, it's up to you if you want to pre-wash your fabrics before you start cutting them. In our kits, and in our instructions at McCall's Quilting, we always figure a little bit of shrinkage. So if you want to wash your fabrics first and throw them through the dryer, you will still have enough fabric. So you're good doing that if you want to. You don't have to, it's up to you. Okay, so I've got my fabric all nice and neat. I'm just going to check both sides. Yep, it's still good. Okay, I did iron this earlier, but then I had to wrinkle it up so it would look bad. Okay. There we go. I have it all set and ready to go. And what I'm going to do, this is the most important part when you're starting to cut, is right here, that fold. That fold is how you're going to get things with the straight of grain and also cut in nice straight lines. And so what you're going to do is, the first thing you have to do is square up your fabric. And by that, I mean you want to put a new cut here that you know is at a right angle to the fold, that you can then use as a clean edge. So that's really important here. Make sure you can see. You want to make sure that one of the lines on your ruler is exactly along that fold. So you're going to want to move your ruler until you get it just right. There. If you look here, and just a tad over here, you'll see that the line is exactly on the fold. That means that when I cut, I have exactly a right angle there, okay? So I'm just going to take my rotary cutter, and keeping the rotary cutter against the blade, against the ruler. This is a lucite ruler. It's a rotary cutting ruler. Don't cut with a regular ruler. You'll lose a hand, okay? And I happen to like the ergonomic rotary cutter, but there are lots of different types out there. You're going to want to try them. If you go into a quilt store, they'll let you try different ones. Okay, so just you'll find what works for you. And all I'm doing is I'm putting the blade against the ruler and just pushing it away from myself gently. You don't have to cut. You don't have to push hard. And close it. Close it after every single cut, okay? Now I'm right-handed, which means I need to now move the fabric so that that clean edge is to my left. Because then I can put the ruler over it. Whoops. There we go. I can put the ruler over it like this, and I can cut strips. So if I wanted to cut a 2.5-inch strip, I put the 2.5 line ruler, 2.5-inch line on the ruler along that nice, fresh, clean edge. You see that? That's my 2.5-inch line. One of the things you might want to look into if you're not comfortable with this, if it's hard for you to read your ruler, there are tapes you can get that are brightly colored that you can lay along on the line you want to be cutting on, just sort of to help you get your eye in. But so all I'm doing is I've got that 2.5-inch line there, and I'm just going to make sure up here that that's still nice and straight with the fold, and it is. So a 2.5-inch strip. I'm going to hold the ruler. Don't have to push it hard. You don't want it moving. You just want to keep it down in place. And again, I'm just sliding that along like that. Okay, and there's a 2.5-inch strip. Now, if you look in your pattern, it doesn't call for 2.5-inch strips that are as wide as the fabric, but it does call for 2.5-inch squares, 2 7/8-inch squares, and in the dark pink, 2.5-inch by 4.5-inch rectangles. Okay, so anything that's got a 2.5-inch width, I can cut from a 2.5-inch strip. I can just subcut it or cross-cut it. I'm going to get a smaller ruler for that. Here's a tip for you. I put my initials on my rulers. This is just a pink Sharpie brush because I like to go with my girlfriends and sew and have retreats and weekends. And it's so easy to have 10 of the same ruler. You know, we all have the same one on the cutting table. So just a tip. Grab a Sharpie or nail polish or something and put your initials on your ruler so you don't lose them. Okay, so here is my strip. Now, if I wanted to, I could cut a second 2.5-inch strip, and I could just put one on top of the other and stack them, making sure that I have those edges just right. Just to save a little time here, I'm just going to fold this one over, which will show you what it looks like. Okay, so I make sure that all my cut edges are nice and neat and right on top of one another like that. Okay, so I'm going to grab my rotary cutter again. I'm going to turn that guy around because I want to cut off the selvage. So when you're doing this, now you see the selvage here, you look at the white, well that's not the end of the selvage. You see those teeny weeny little dots? Those are the dots that go on the little wheels that move the fabric through the machinery. And I want to get rid of those too because I don't want that in my patch. And another thing is that, okay, the selvage ends here on this part, but is it the same place on the one underneath? Because usually a selvage is whiter on one side or the other. Whoops, there we go. Okay, you'll see the selvage is there. I need to make sure these happen to be aligned. How wonderful. But sometimes that selvage could be all the way over here. You want to make sure you're cutting off the selvage on all the layers, all the way down. Okay, so here's my ruler. I'm going to put it so that one of the straight lines on the ruler is on that edge of my strip, and the other straight line is here, on this edge. If they don't match, if you have a straight line that's perfect here, but here your fabric's going at an angle or something, it means that your strip wasn't cut properly. So don't take time to subcut if you can tell that your strip's already wrong. Okay, so I'm just going to hold that down and cut like that, close that, and you, oops, now I didn't cut all the way through. So I'll just do it again. That's why I didn't move the ruler until I checked it. There we go. People ask me, why do you have to close your rotary cutter? You're the only one in the room, you don't have any little kids, you know, you really don't need to do that. Well, here's why you do need to do that. If you have your rotary cutter open, it's on your fabric, and you grab your fabric and you're not really paying attention, the rotary cutter can go right off the table and onto your foot, and believe it or not, if it lands blade down, just from falling, it will cut into your foot and it'll cut in pretty deeply. So close it every time. Just get in the habit. You won't even think about it after a couple times. Okay, so I'm going to turn this around again because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you would do the reverse. Okay, I want to cut a 2.5-inch square. On my ruler, you can see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 2.5 is right there. So I'm going to make sure I have that 2.5-inch line on the clean edge here and the other 2.5 inch line right there on the edge of the strip. If I have it in the right place, the edge of the ruler should also be on the edge of that side. Okay, looks good to me. Now I'm cutting through 4 layers. And look how easy that was. Ta-dum! 4 layers, just that fast. Okay? If I wanted to cut my 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles, if you have cut all the squares you need, you don't have to go to a whole new strip to cut rectangles. As long as there's the same dimension, you can cut strips, rectangles, squares from the same strip. Okay, this is going to be 2.5 by 4.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5. My 2.5 there, and I'm just going to put that at that corner again, making sure everything's lined up just right. You might want to wiggle around. You don't want to cut it like that. There you go. Make sure you have it just right. Take a little time if you need to, and hold that down. If you're new to rotary cutting, it can seem a little awkward. It will not feel awkward it just goes so fast that you get used to it and you do it with no trouble at all. Okay, so that's how you subcut. You know, you cut the strip the width that you need, and then you can subcut other sizes. I'm going to show you something else. Now, the way I just showed you is the most traditional way to get a clean edge and get started cutting. Well, I'm going to show you another way. If you don't feel comfortable cutting a clean edge and then turning the fabric around to get that clean edge to the other side, to the left where you need it to be, I'm going to show you a trick. Okay. Here's this edge down here. It's just like the one over on this side in that you see that it's not cut at a perfect right angle. It's not with a grain. I have this stuff sticking out. I need a nice clean cut. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure I know where the nearest part is to me, so I don't think it's out here. Just kind of know where it is. And then instead of having to cut a clean edge and flip it, what I'm going to do is look at my cutting instructions. Now I know I need things that are 2.5 inches wide. Okay, so I'm going to go to something a little bigger. In this case, like 3 inches. And I'm going to go right along here, and I'm going to get that 3-inch line where I know there's fabric. So about here. And the reason I'm doing 3 instead of 2.5 is because I'm giving myself a little wiggle room in case I can't get that exactly right. Okay, so this 3-inch line is approximately just to the side of where that fabric comes in underneath. I'm going to do the same thing I did before, where I'm lining up the ruler just on this edge. Ignore everything else. You just want the fold to be exactly right with one of the lines. There. Okay, it's about 3 inches. This doesn't have to be perfect, but this is pretty cool. And I'm just going to cut that off like that. And now I have this clean edge where I need it to be on the left. And what am I going to do with this? Now I just flip that over, and because I had cut 3 inches, I need a 2.5-inch strip. I can use that clean edge now. There we go. Get that just on that 2.5-inch, see like that? And cut. So maybe I'll lose an inch or so of fabric, but I didn't have to flip that big piece. And if you have a really big piece, say you have something that's 2.5 yards long, so much easier to just cut something a little wider than you need and then flip just one little strip. Okay, so we're going to move on to cutting those big border strips. All right, now here's the border fabric. Oh, I love this. Look at that. This is Northcott's Charlotte collection, these gorgeous florals. Oh, okay. Northcott's always had fabric that feels fabulous. And what we need 2 border strips that are 8.5 by 84 and 2 that are 8.5 by 68. Now, when you look at the pattern instructions and you see that 84 and 68, you might be thinking that when you finish a quilt top, except for the borders, when you've got that center done, that it's going to be 84 inches and 68. It's not. The fabric length, the length of the strip, has been given to you a little long that allows you to trim to the right length, depending on, because different people sew differently. Your quilt might be 3/8 of an inch bigger or 3/8 of an inch smaller. So the proper way, the best way to figure out what size to cut your border strips is to measure your quilt through the middle. So you would measure the quilt vertically through the center until you have that measurement, okay? Raw edge to raw edge. That's the length that you're going to be using on your borders. That's going to be the side borders, okay? And then your top and bottom borders are going to be the measurement after you put on the side borders. You're going to measure through the middle, again, with those side borders added on, raw edge to raw edge, the middle, okay? That's what you're going to cut those strips to. And it may be that one side of your quilt is a little longer and one's a little shorter. Well, if you cut the strips to that middle length, it can ease in where it needs to, or just stretch a teeny bit if it needs to. But either way, you're going to have it be a square quilt. You're not going to have all these, rippling borders that nobody can quilt out those messes. And you'll have it so it looks lovely and it'll be beautiful. And one little tip, if you have extra fabric on one, let's say that the border at the edge of your quilt center, instead of being 64, let's say, or 68, it wouldn't be 68 because that's a long strip. But let's say that one side is 63 and the other side is 62 3/4. Well, if you've measured in the middle, you're probably coming up just about 62 7/8. But that side that's long has a little bit of extra fabric. Your border strip's going to be a little shorter than that long side. So the way to get rid of some of that fabric to help it kind of ease in is to put the piece that's a little too long underneath when you're going through the machine, because the feed dogs will help to just sort of ease that in. And that's true anytime you're sewing. If you have one piece that's a little bit too long compared to the one it's supposed to be sewn to, if you put that one down on the bottom, the feed dogs will help you bring that in. Okay. I need to cut something 8.5 inches wide and 84 inches long. How in the world do you do that? I have this huge length of fabric. What am I going to do? Okay, here's how you do it. The most important thing is, again, do what I did before, where you just get it all, make sure you've got the grain right, make sure you've squared up that fabric, and then press that middle. Just get that fold pressed, okay? And you can do this, I usually do one layer at a time. And you can do it, some people can do it where it's folded. And that's fine, but if your fold isn't exactly 90 degrees, the length, this long fold down here, isn't exactly 90 degrees from this one, when you open your strip, it's going to be like a V shape. It's going to go like that and like that. So if you're not really super good at it, you don't have to do it that way. You can cut with just the one and you move the fabric down. So here's what that's going to look like. Okay. Now obviously my mat is not 84 inches long. And I want to make sure that I get this 8.5 inches wide. How do you do that? How do you make sure you've got this all, you can't just trim off the selvage and know that this is exactly right. Well, here's how you do it. Okay, I'm going to take that fold, my middle fold, and I'm going to put it right along a line on the ruler, on the mat, like that, and make sure it's lined up. Okay, just right, like that. Now, okay, at home, you're going to be able to move the ruler or move around the table so you can really see it, but you get the idea, just like that. Okay, what I'm now going to do, oops, wiggled it away. Okay, get it back on its line. Come here, thing. I hope you talk to your fabric. I hope you pet your fabric. All right. So what I'm going to do, now I know I need to get 8.5 inch strips. All right, I am cutting 2 layers. Well, 2 8.5 inch strips, 8.5 times 2 is 17. Okay, so it's gonna, be out here somewhere, but I want to cut fairly close to here. This is how you're going to make sure it's straight and exactly parallel to that one. You have this along a line, and you're going to take a ruler like this, and you're going to put one of the lines of your ruler on this line of your mat. So I want to cut fairly close to selvage because I like to keep my fabric, I like to have as a little waist as possible. There we go. This line on my ruler is being aligned with this line on the mat. What that means because that edge of the fabric is aligned with the line on the mat. And my ruler is, when I cut here, it's going to be perfectly parallel. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm looking carefully. It's the 2-inch line on my ruler. And I'm just going to carefully cut along here. Don't cut across yourself. Don't cut towards yourself, but this is okay. Just do that. Okay. Now, I've only cut, 24 inches of my 84-inch border. So what do? You just slide it down. Okay. Slide it down. You make sure you get the fold of your fabric on the same line of your ruler that you had it on before. Okay. We'll just pretend that that's perfect. I can't see it as well as I might, but okay. So that's all aligned. I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure that 2-inch line on my ruler is aligned with the line on the mat. Just like that, just like it was last time. There we go. Okay, that looks just right. And again, I'm going to come over here, take my rotary cutter, and cut along like that. And look at that. You went right into the other one. Woohoo! Okay, so I would do that all the way along to make sure I had a nice clean edge that was parallel to my fold. Now, how do I get an 8.5-inch strip cut from here? Okay, it's long. How am I going to do that? So what if I wanted to use the markings on the mat? So I'd fix my fabric just right, and I'd want to cut, say, 8.5 inches along here. Well, how's that going to work? I can't line this up with anything, right? Now I'm going to show you how to do that. Again, you make sure that's right on the line, just where you want it, like you did before. Oops. Squiggle wiggle. Okay. Well, from my viewpoint, that's pretty good. It could probably be better, but I can't see it from here. Okay, so I have that just right. Now is where I use a square ruler. Square rulers come in big and huge, which might come in handy with a really wide border. Right now, I'm going to use the big one. Okay, I need an 8.5-inch strip. So on my ruler, I'm just going to go 8.5 inches here, right? Okay, so I've got my 8.5-inch mark on my ruler, line on my ruler, aligned with that cut edge. Okay? It doesn't matter now if this is perfect because I'm not using the mat to cut. All right? So I'm going to hold that right there, 8.5 inches. All right, and cut along. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll do 8.5 inches here, like that. Hold that steady. Go along like that. And then I have to move my fabric down. Oh, same thing. Just move that fabric down, like that. And keep going. And it may seem like it's taking forever, but in fact, I am cutting 2 strips at once. And more to the point, they're going to be just right. Okay, and there's another one. And in no time at all, I've got that 84-inch strip cut. Okay, so we're going to pretend that I did that. And this one's all cut and it's gone. You're going to do the same thing to cut the next strips. So cut the 84-inch ones first. Always cut the bigger pieces first. The pattern is written, all the McCall's patterns are written so that you're cutting the biggest pieces first. But it applies on borders too. You're going to want to do that 84-inch one first. So this one, I've already got this nice clean edge, don't I? So I can just go right to the 8.5 again, like that, and cut right along. And do the next one. And I would just do the same thing all the way down until I reach the 68 inches. Okay, so we're going to pretend I have this strip cut. I'm just going to, I love this fabric. Oh boy, I really do. I'm a gardener, and it's so much fun to get the garden in the house with pretty fabric. So even in the middle of the night, I can be gardening when it's dark. Okay, so here are my strips. Okay, I'm going to keep those stacked like that. I want to make sure I have a clean end. Of course I do. So all I have to do is put one line of the ruler along one of those cut edges. Make sure it's just right. Cut that off, and there you have it. That is a perfectly squared end. And when I want to cut the length, how do you measure the length? Here's how I measure the length. Let me grab a pin. Okay. Now we're pretending I have this big long strip. It's 84 inches long. Okay. I have now measured the quilt, my quilt center, and I know that I need to cut my strip 80.5 inches long. Okay. So what I'm going to do, this mat only goes up to 36. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that cut edge and put it right on that first line, which is the 36 line. And way down over here, I'm going to go right over to the line that starts the whole thing. And I'm going to put a pin in right there. Okay, there's my pin for that one. Making sure it hasn't moved. And I've got it nice and flat. I'll just smooth it over, and I'll put another pin right here. Okay, whoops. I'll make sure it's right there. Okay, you see the pin, where the pin goes in is exactly on that line. I know that's exactly 36 inches. So if I have this big long strip, I would now move it down like this, and I would put my pin, knowing that it's where I put the pin in. The hole where I put in the pin, I'm going to line that one on this line, and the same thing here. And then I would lay my strip out all the way down, my 84-inch strip, which is, this is how I'm going to get it. Because you don't have to worry about the 84. At least you have 84. You could cut it at 85 or 86. It doesn't matter yet because you're trimming. Okay, get those right where they, on the line, those holes where I put them in. I'd go all the way down here, and I would do the same thing, where I put a pin on this side, pin on this side. Now I know it's 72 inches, right? So I would move those pins until I need 80.5. 80.5 minus 72 is 8.5 inches. So I'm going to put that pin over here on that 8.5 inch line on my board. It would be right here. Okay, and I would just bring that down, make sure I had that right. And this over here, I'd have another pin that I would also make sure was just right. And then I would take a ruler, put it here on this line. And of course, if you have a ruler, the 24-inch ruler, it will go completely over half of a width of fabric. I'll just align it there and here and cut. And there would be my 80.5-inch strip. It's really accurate, and it's really easy, and it's not nearly as time-consuming as you might think. And for me, it works a lot better than doing the folds because I don't have to worry about getting the wonky cuts. So that's how I cut my border strips. I hope you can give it a shot, see if it works for you. Remember that the cut length in the instructions is too long. It's made that way so you can then trim, okay? So measure your quilt, raw edge to raw edge, vertically through the center. Cut your two side strips to that measurement. Then after you've sewn those on, you're going to measure raw edge to raw edge, the width of the quilt, raw edge to raw edge through the center. That's the size you're going to cut, the length you're going to cut those longer strips to before you sew them top and bottom. So that's it. That's your little cutting refresher and my way of cutting big borders. I hope it works for you. I hope you enjoy it. And I can't wait till we get started next time, because next time we actually start sewing blocks. We're going to start with the corner blocks. So if you want to use the same fabric I'm using, it's the Northcott Charlotte collection as well as their Toscana solids, which are unbelievable. You just wait till you feel them. I wish we had feel-o-vision and you could feel these fabrics. Unfortunately, you can't, but they're gorgeous and wonderful. So if you want the kit that has the same fabrics in it, just go to mccallsquilting.com/quiltalong and you can order one there. And I can't wait. I just can't wait till we get on to the next part where we start really playing with the fabric. So I'll see you back here next time.